Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, whatever the proper greeting of the day is where you are. I'm just going to go ahead and get started with a little introduction of the ICCP. If this is your first time joining us for a webinar, welcome. I hope you enjoy this informative session. Okay, so who are we and why do people need the Institute of Construction Claims Practitioners? Well, we are a professional members organization that recognizes those with the skills, qualifications, and expertise in the professional management of construction claims. So we have three main objectives. One is to establish international professional standards. Second is to give recognition to those who meet those standards. And third, to help and educate those who wish to gain the experience and skills in the management of claims. Okay, so why is there a need for the ICCP when there are so many other construction bodies out there? Well, quite simply, construction claims have become a key part of the international construction industry. Claims is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the industry. And many of the professionals who work in claims come from a variety of backgrounds. So we have members who come from engineering, quantity surveying, project management, even law, et cetera, quite a few different areas. And until now, there has been no body that specifically recognizes the skills that they have acquired in the professional management of claims. Okay, I would like to very quickly introduce our steering committee. We have our executive officer and founder, Andy Hewitt, our current president, Paul Gibbons. We have three fellows who are elected by the membership to serve on our steering committee. And we also have a general manager, Nina Hewitt-Tyrell. She is currently on maternity leave, so I am filling in for her at the moment. And I'm Jen, if you haven't met me before. Okay, in terms of membership, we have 5 levels of individual membership. I am not going to go through all of them. I will just say, as with most professional bodies, there are different criteria and qualifications for each level of membership. I will just point out we have 2 new levels of membership, student members and graduate members. The graduate membership is for previous student members who have graduated. So at the moment, we do not have a level of membership for those who have just graduated, but do not have yet any experience in claims. But that will probably change in the future. We also have corporate membership. If you would like more information on corporate membership, please do get in touch. Okay, and what's in it for the members? Why should someone like yourself join the ICCP? Well, we have a private members area on our website, which has a knowledge bank, which includes research, white papers, case studies, etc. We also have a library of practical templates that members are free to use in their own claims to save them time and ensure that their claims are done to the highest standards. We have regular CPD opportunities, such as this one. Many of them, like this one, are open to the public. However, CPD certificates are a benefit of membership. We have the ICCP Academy, which are short technical sessions that are a bit more in-depth, and those are not open to the public. We have savings on books from Wiley Blackwell and Rutledge, as well as a 10% discount on all courses offered by our training partner, Claims Class. We have a monthly members newsletter to keep members up to date on what's going on. We have a public listing of membership to offer industry exposure, as well as certificates of membership and membership logos that members are free to use where they please. We also have a private LinkedIn group where members are welcome to discuss their contracts and claims questions in a confidential setting. Finally, we have an optional benefit of the Register of Claims Practitioners, where members can opt to have their own private webpage announcing their skills and services. Okay, if you would like to know more, because I know I went through that all very quickly, you may either visit our website, instituteccp.com, or email me at jennifer.smith.instituteccp.com. If you requested information before the session began, when you registered, I will be emailing you with further information. And just before we get started, I have a couple of announcements. Our next session, I'm still trying to get the date pinned down for our September session, but in October, David Kagwa, one of our fellows, will be presenting on liquidated damages, employers' claims under FIDIC 1999, subclause 2.5, versus FIDIC 2017, subclause 20.1, and that will be on October 18th. And additionally, if this topic of FIDIC Green Book 1999 versus 2017 is interesting to you, and you would like to know more about the other books in the FIDIC suite of contracts, Claims Class, our training partner, will be offering a course beginning the 12th of October, which is comparing FIDIC red, yellow, and silver books 1999 versus 2017. And I will be including information about that in the email that I send to people who want further information. And I think that is all for my announcements. I do see 2 questions in the Q&A box. So that brings me to mentioning, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box and not the chat box, and then I will see it. Let's see, with that, I will hand this over to Mansoor Ali, who is one of our fellows, and also he is Director of Engineering Operations at Habshi Engineering Consultants in Kuwait, as well as a variety of other things. He is a very busy man, but I will let him tell you more about himself now.
All right, I hope this is good now. My voice is good, and the screen is well seen, right? Okay. All right, thank you once again, Jennifer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining up for this session. My sincere appreciation to Jennifer Smith, who ignited this thought to me and made me work on FIDIC Green Books, also giving an opportunity to launch this subject through the Institute of Construction Claim Practitioners. A lot of gratitude goes to the many friends around the globe who have been supporting my initiative of FIDIC short videos, which I have been publishing in LinkedIn since the lean period of pandemic. For those who have been following my various series, and in particular, the ongoing FIDIC Green series, this webinar of today may be a repetition, since 5 of the 6 parts have already been published in LinkedIn by now, which I think Iccp also had posted it, Anyway, moving forward, as a preface, I want to be very honest that this subject may not be a cheer winner because it's very basic in nature, as I'm not covering the Green Books in detail, but going on the periphery of the Green Book first edition published on 1999, and later highlighting what changes have been brought into the second edition of 2021 Green Book. By the way, I am a FIDIC affiliate member also, and a member of IFI, or International Financial Institution Committee, which is newly formed by FIDIC. You may be familiar with IFI. Apart from the liaison and coordination with various funding institutions, we also conduct webinars, and you should keep a watch for the upcoming webinars during October and December. Details you could get from FIDIC website. I'm sorry to be doing a little marketing on this, like how Iccp marketing was done by Jennifer here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, too much introduction by now, and let's get to the subject. Wishing this will benefit you in some manner, at least to find time to explore the new FIDIC Green Book of 2021 edition and practice that to your projects in future. Green Book, as called with its color, is the short form of contract, first published by FIDIC in 1999. On the left side, you see the cover page format. FIDIC Green 1999 consists of agreement, followed by Appendix. Then comes the general conditions, followed by rules for adjudication, and lastly, the notes for guidance. So I don't know how many of you would have noticed by now that there is no particular conditions in this, and we will get to it as we move along. All right, FIDIC Green Book is recommended for engineering and building works of relatively small capital value. At the time of the inception, a reasonable construction cost of about 500,000 and 6 months construction period was considered as a limit on capital value and duration during its inception, when red, yellow, and silver books were earmarked for larger as well as conventional or non-conventional projects. However, the World Bank had suggested its use for contract values up to $10 million US. Nevertheless, depending on the type of the green books, type of the works, Green Book may be suitable for contracts of considerably greater value also. Green Book is considered most likely to be suitable for fairly simple or repetitive work or works of short duration without the need for specialist subcontracts. The main intention is to produce very flexible document of 15 clauses in comparison to the 20 and 21 clauses for the Rainbow suite. FIDIC Green Book contains essential commercial provision with variety of administrative arrangements within the 12 or odd pages of the 1999 edition. So similar to the conventional contract, the contractor constructs work in accordance with the design provided by the employer, usually for this type of contract. However, Green Book is suitable for purely contractor designed civil or M&E works or partially designed by the contractor. It's also envisaged that in Green Book, there would be no traditional engineer in the formal sense. Instead, the employer takes over the functions usually performed by the engineer or the employer's representative. However, the employer may appoint an independent engineer to act impartially by modifying the clause 3 of the conditions. Likewise, like what I said at the start of today's webinar, and unlike any other FIDIC editions, there is no particular conditions where the intention is that all necessary information should be incorporated in the appendix to the agreement. The dispute resolution provisions are more basic than other FIDIC contract, as it was meant for smaller and simpler projects. There is no provision for amicable dispute resolution, nor a standing DAB, but contains provisions for an adjudicator. Also, there is no reference to the ICC arbitration, perhaps due to the smaller value of the contract. The parties instead decide the applicable rules and other arrangements in the appendix to the agreement. Apart from Appendix 2 agreement, the contract includes rules for adjudication, an adjudicator's agreement, and guidance note, like what I said at the start. Some of the other flexibilities could be pricing. It could be a matter of choice with lump sum remeasurement as well as cost reimbursable options. A single document is proposed for the form of tender and agreement, reflecting the simple projects envisaged. Due to its simplicity, there is an increased burden on the employer to set out in specification and drawing the full scope of work, including the extent of any design to be done by the contractor. The conditions contain no overall limit on the contractor's liability. You will notice that most of these flaws has been correctly identified in the second edition. We will discuss this more as we move along. We will now move into the agreement and appendix before getting into the general conditions of the contract. FIDIC Green Book provides a printed form of agreement, which is simple procedure of offer and acceptance. It is intended that the employer will write in the employer's name in the agreement and fill in the appendix where appropriate and send 2 copies with full tender package to the contractor to complete the remaining spaces and sign. Having decided which tender to accept, the employer signs the acceptance section. So we have the offer section and now the acceptance section of both copies and return 1 copy to the contractor whom he finally selects. The contract comes into effect upon receipt by the contractor of his copy. If post-tender negotiations are made, a revised offer from contractor is accepted by the employer, signing and returning the acceptance form, or a completely new form of agreement completed by both parties. When the applicable law imposes any form of tax the employer should make clear whether tenderers should include such taxes in their prices. Similarly, if payment is to be made in whole or in part in a currency other than the currency of the country, the employer should make this clear in the tenders. So appendix is somewhere the employer can cover any matter similar to this and should complete the appendix as prior to inviting the tenders. Tenderer may be given an option to insert the time of completion if none is specified. Where the tenderers are required to submit the design with their tenders, the documents containing the tender design should be identified by the tenderer at respective section of the appendix. Various options using FIDIC Green Book 1999 is explained at the end of the book in a section entitled Notes for Guidance, which do not form part of the contract. Accordingly, once the employer considers the option available to him under the Green Book, he is guided to select what he needs and deletes what he does not, ending in a contract form to his choice, and thereby complete an appendix incorporating the characteristic of his chosen contract prior to inviting tenders. As indicated earlier, this appendix appears at the beginning of the Green Book as part of the agreement, which will be eventually signed with the selected contractor. So here I'm trying to show you a screenshot of the appendix and the agreement of FIDIC Green 1999 book. On the agreement side, you will find the offer, and then towards the end, the acceptance section. In the appendix, you will see various things. Along with that, the time of completion, the law, language, and on the other sections, you will find, the insurances, the adjudication, and even the valuation of the works procedures. So that was some general introduction as well as agreement and appendix. Now we'll move with the 15 clauses one by one on a high level. So the clause 1 is general provisions. In fact, the subclause 1.1, the definitions are not all the same as those found in other FIDIC contracts, and only around 19 items are defined, whereas in the FIDIC 2021 there are about 40 items, and in the 2017 rainbow suits we have close to about 65-70 definitions identified. So this must be a result of the need for simplicity in the condition of this sort. Some of the definitions provided under the heads are in the contract. The only definitions provided is for the contract specification and drawings, and in person the definitions are for employer, contractor, and party. And dates, times, and period, the definitions are provided for commencement date, day, and completion date. Now, there are some of these are significantly different definitions, like the commencement date. Here it means the 14 days after the date of agreement comes into effect, or any other date agreed between the parties. So the other definitions in money and payments are for the cost, and the other definitions consist of contractors, equipment, country, employer's liability, force majeure, material, plant, site, variation, and works. So the site, variation, and works are also significantly different in comparison to the other books. Like works mean all the works and design to be performed by the contractor, including temporary works and any variations. And variation is something like, variations means a change to the specification and or drawing, which is instructed by the employer. Site is a place where provided by the employer where the works are to be executed, and any other place specified in the contract as forming part of the site. I'm sorry, this might be going a little boring, but this is some subject which is important for all of you to know before we jump into the 2021 edition. The other subclauses in this clause is interpretation, priority of document, law, communication, and the statutory obligation. All texted in simple language, making it very ideal for small projects. So moving to clause 2, the employer, you will find the 2 subclauses or 4 subclauses here are provision of site, permits and license, employer's instruction, and the approvals. In provision of site, you will notice that unless the parties have agreed otherwise and stated in appendix, the site must be handed over by the employer to the contractor on the commencement date, which is 14 days after the contract has come in effect, like what it was defined in the definitions. And to clause 3, which is employer's representative. Now, through subclause 3.1 and 3.2, you will see the authorized person and employer's representative. In the authorized person, there has to be a name by the employer in the appendix, and that the contractor would know who in the employer organization is authorized to speak and act for the employer at any given time. And through this employer's representative, it allows employer who require professional assistance to have their consultant if required, with clearly established delegated powers. Once appointed, the employer's representative act for and in the interest of the employer. And there's no dual role or duty to be impartial here. Now we move to clause 4, the contractor. And the subclauses here are 4.1 general obligation, 4.2 contractor's representative, 4.3 subcontracting, and 4.4 performance security. There's no suggested forms of performance bond or security bond provided in this one, although the amount should be stated out in the appendix. Now clause 5, designed by the contractor. As with all design build contract, it is essential that the employer's requirements are set out clearly and precisely. The contractor will have an absolute obligation to ensure that the parts of the work designed by him are fit for the purpose, provided that the intended purpose are defined in the contract. So this is very clearly detailed through the subclause 5.1 contractor's design and the responsibility for the design. But the biggest paradox is that you will notice that there is no mention of professional indemnity insurance in FIDIC Green 1999 book, although design by contractor is encouraged. Moving to clause 6, employer's liability. There's only one subclause here, employer's liability itself, subclause 6.1, and this subclause gathers together in one place all the employer's liability and thereby the grounds for extension of time. Although the employer's liability lists many items, bad weather is not listed, thereby such occurrence doesn't bring in any extra time or cost claims. Grouping all the employer's risk in one clause, including those that lead to pure economic and or time loss, together with others that lead to loss and or damage, is certainly a good idea. Now on to clause 7, time for completion. Here the subclauses, various subclauses are execution of works program. In the program, there is no, if there is a particular requirement of the form and level of the detail of program, that should be included in the appendix. And subclause 7.3 is the extension of time. One interesting thing is it also has an early warning. An extension of time should not be granted to the extent that any failure by the contractor to give an early warning notice under subclause 10.3 contributed to its delay. So it's now connecting the subclause 10.3 here. And the subclause 7.4 late completion, there is a maximum amount which the contractor is liable to pay for late completion specified in appendix, and 10% normally suggested like any other places. Now, halfway into the 1999 Green Book, I'm not sure how good this is reaching you. This short video, which I had made and I posted on LinkedIn, are more easier to follow, and I recommended you all follow my LinkedIn page to see this. Anyway, moving to clause 8, taking over. Once the works are ready to be used for their intended purpose, the notice should be given. There is no provision for taking over of only parts of the work. Keep in mind, there is no provision for taking over of only parts of the work. And if any tests are required to be completed prior to taking over, these tests should be specified in the specification. So, that subclause 8.1 completion and taking over notice in subclause 8.2 gives detail about what I was talking about. Clause number 9, remedying defects. There's no defined defects liability period, but during the period, normally 12 months from the date of taking over, these subclauses 8.1 remedying defects and subclause 9.2 uncovering and testing will be applicable there. And comes to clause 10, variation and claims. As explained earlier during the definition, variation is defined to include any changes to the specification or drawing included in the contract. It requires the contractor to notify the employer of event promptly and to detail any claim within 28 days. If the effect of the events are increased to the ability of the employer to verify any claim is affected by the failure to notify, then the employer is protected. These are detailed in subclasses right to vary 10.1, valuation of variation, subclass 10.3, early warning, right to claim 10.4 and 10.5, variation and claim procedures. Moving to clause 11 now, contractor price and payments. The sum in the offer is to be calculated and presented through either lump sum price with schedule of rates, lump sum price with BOQ, remeasurement with BOQ, or cost reimbursement, as explained at the start of this presentation. And the various subclauses here are valuation of the works, monthly statement, interim payment, payment of first half of retention, second half of retention, final payment, currency, and the delayed payment. Through the final payment, the second release of the second part of the retention will serve as a confirmation that all notified defects have been remedied. I'm not sure how many of you have noticed here that there is no provision for the advance payment in this clause here. Now to clause 12, default. Default by contractor, 12.1, default by employer. This default by employer gives a provision or provides the contractor's main remedy for non-payment, and 12.3 insolvency and 12.4 payment upon termination. This 12.4 enables the financial aspect of the contract to be resolved quickly and without the necessity to await the completion of the works by the others. And now to clause 13, risk and responsibility. You will notice one strange thing, that the risk and responsibility word, or the risk word, the only place which it appears in the 1999 is in the title, in the clause title where it is stated risk. Other than that, there is nowhere a risk is being stated. And that flaw has been completely overcome in the 2021 edition, which we will go through more in detail coming few minutes. So the two subclauses here are contractor's care of work 13.1 and force majeure. 13.2 force majeure, to qualify as force majeure, events must prevent performance of an obligation. Now the second last clause is the insurance clause, clause 14. The flexibility of the document is a significant feature of the Green Book, particularly where insurance is concerned. This is due to the fact that the relevant clause only specifies the general framework of the cover required, leaving the various detail to be completed by the employer in the appendix, with extensive freedom to include any insurance requirement and in detail he deems fit. Therefore, the employer should set out his precise requirement in appendix. I'm not sure how many of you would have noticed the snapshots of agreement and appendix when I was just going through in the early part of this presentation. So the subclauses here are the extent of cover 14.1, 14.2 is the arrangements, and 14.3 is the failure to insure. And we move to the last clause, clause 15, resolution of dispute, where we have the three subclauses: adjudication, notice of dissatisfaction, and arbitration. Arbitration may not be commenced unless the dispute has first been the subject of an adjudication. Before continuing forward, just a kind request to get in touch with me through my LinkedIn or email details, which will be shared towards the end of this presentation. I had successfully presented 3-4 minutes of short videos in LinkedIn covering various topics and may be of interest to you. Just give me a small break. All right, now you all know about the Green Book 2021 edition. However, as FIDIC explains in the foreword of the 2021 Green Book, in recent years, the form has been increasingly used for the project with a time of completion of longer than 2 years and greater capital value. So with seemingly a desire to move away from the 1999 suit altogether, FIDIC explained that this 2021 edition of the Green Book can accommodate both smaller projects as well as the relatively larger projects. This detail we will be talking more in the minutes to come. So the second edition contains several new inclusions, like some of the most important things. the professional indemnity insurance, and then you read through that, you will find the limits on liability. Moving down, you will find the taking over of the works, responsibility for subcontracting, defects and defects notification period, indemnities. Also, the claim and variation have now been separated. So the 2021 Green Book is certainly longer than its predecessor, with 30 pages as opposed to the 12 or odd pages of the 1999 edition, but still considerably shorter than the 2017 forms, which run to around 107 pages. So imagine 109 or 107 pages of 2017 versus 30 pages of the Green 2021. The style of the 2021 Green Book reflects the 2017 forms, but without the same degree of complexity. Of course, the 109 pages versus the 30 pages itself is an example of that. And this 2021 Green Book is positioned as an alternative to FIDIC 2017 Red Book and FIDIC 2017 Yellow Book. And I repeat, FIDIC 2021 edition is positioned as stated in the foreword as an alternative to FIDIC 2017 Red Book and FIDIC 2017 Yellow Books. Many of my friends in Uzbekistan and Maldives were asking why we are taking up a topic on this FIDIC Green Book 2021. And the answer to that is that this is very much positioned as an alternative to the FIDIC 2017 Red and FIDIC 2017 Yellow Books. Now, let me sail across a few key features that are new to this 2021 Green Book versus the first edition on a high level. The foreword contains a long and helpful explanation of the salient features of the form and how it works. So once you read that, you get a complete understanding of what new things have happened in this 2021 edition. A number of typical sequence of events, flow diagrams for processes, such as principal events from tender issue to the final payment, and only for the payments like the interim payment and the final payment, claim management, dispute, then termination by the employer or suspension or termination by the contractor, and variation. So these are very clearly detailed through some typical sequence of events flowcharts. And we will be talking about that in the coming slide. So just out of context, if you are more keen on knowing the events and flowcharts of the FIDIC Red, Yellow, and Silver 2017 edition, you may view my LinkedIn page where a series was made specifically on this. Now, as I said, the new form contemplates having particular conditions. Some of the key features in 2021 Green Book is that there's a contract data pro forma document that contains a formula for calculating a prolongation cost for the compensable delays. This is there in the particular conditions of contract, and a table for sectional completion detailing time for completion for each section and related delay damages. So the whole job is now broken down into so many sections if you would like to, and that could be included in the particular conditions, such as, and also a number of options for the pricing and valuing of the works like lump sum price, single payment, stage payment with bill of quantities, remeasurement, cost plus, and a combination of options. Whereas in 1999 edition, there is no mention of risk, like what I said a little while earlier, except in the title. There's nowhere else in the first edition, 1999, risk is mentioned. However, in 2021 edition, there are more detailed provisions around employer's risk with compensable delay giving rise to extension of time or extension of time and cost, or cost plus profit, and excusable delay to only extension of time only. The various employer's risk event and corresponding remedies are all set out now in one big table in the conditions of contract. We will just be sharing that as a screenshot for you to later understand. The variation procedures, there are two procedures now, one instructed where the contractor is required to execute the variation and settle the time and cost impact separately. And the other one is the staged one where the contractor submits a proposal that can be accepted or rejected. Now, as I said, showing you some of the screenshots of the typical sequence of events, flow diagrams. Now, first one is the principal events from tender issue to the final payment. You might have seen this kind of a thing in the other FIDIC 1999 and 2017 editions. So the next one I'm showing is for the payments here. And this is for the interim payment as well as for the final payment. Now we move into the claim management. There are procedures set out there clearly, and the flow chart is shown. Now the termination by the employer, as well as the other flow chart for the termination and suspension by the contractor. And lastly, there is a flow diagram for the variations and the whole procedures related to that. That was some advancement in the 2021 edition, and continuing forward on other key features of this new form. The 2021 edition introduces an engineer now to manage the project and determine claims, which bring the Green Book into line with the other main FIDIC forms. Claim must be notified within 28 days and a fully detailed claim with supporting particulars produced within 56 days. As with the 1999 Green Book, dispute are to be determined in the first instance by an adjudicator as a condition precedent to the final determination by the arbitration. So no change in that. The procedure is somewhat different. However, with the adjudicator in the 2021 form being appointed from the start, within the 28 days of the contract coming into effect and remaining in place throughout to provide informal assistance to the parties when issues or disagreements arise, and then determining a dispute, any dispute referred to him in accordance with the adjudication rules. So the only change here in the 2021 is that you have like a standing DAB member. The new version also introduces an advance warning provision where either party is to notify the other and the engineer to advise the parties of any known probable event which may delay or disrupt the execution of the works or increase the contract price. The level of responsibility on the contractor for its design has now been enhanced, and with this, there is a corresponding requirement of professional indemnity insurance covered by the contractor to cover any liability arising out of any act, error, or omission by the contractor in carrying out its design obligations. Right now, a snapshot of what I talked about earlier, the risk table. This is all coming in one table within the clause 17, within that particular clause. Right now, we're getting to the last slide of this presentation, and regret really if this has taken too long than expected. As with the earlier version, termination costs are predetermined and expressed as liquidated damages, as LDs payable on termination due to the contractor's default on insolvency remains on 20%. When the contractor terminates, it remains entitled to demobilization and any other cost reasonably incurred in expectation of completion of the works, plus the 10% of the value of the incomplete works. Where the employer chooses to exclude the work, it is liable to the contractor for the cost of the omission plus 10% of the value of the omitted works. The new version also introduces a termination for convenience clause for the benefit of the employer, with the cost being the same as the termination by the contractor for employer default. The new version also contains several add-ins like the new risk table, the table which sets out insurance responsibilities of each party, which includes the professional indemnity cover in the case of contractor's design. And also for the payment valuation method, there is a tick box selection method now. So this Green Book is no longer represented as dedicated to only simple or repetitive works and or short duration and or limited capital value projects. With the market feedbacks over the last 2 years showing a significant use of Green Book on a project of over 10 million USD capital value and time of completion exceeding 2 years, FIDIC has taken due care and account of this market data when preparing the second edition, which is accordingly to be positioned as an alternative to FIDIC 2017 Red Book and to FIDIC 2017 Yellow Book as appropriate. So this is what I said in the start also. I hope by now you would have understood that how much this is positioned to take up that part. Anyway, that was quite a lengthy talk on a fairly simple FIDIC book. I know it must have been tough to all, including me, to sit at one place all along. It's always interesting to present something in a live crowd and to speak looking at the mood, but you can't complain to have got such a great crowd of about 600 plus, which otherwise would never have been possible. Thank you all once again, and I'm happy to conclude this webinar from my side. In fact, a video series was launched in 6 parts to cover this subject, 5 of which was already published by now, and as I mentioned earlier, which you may find more attractive to follow. You may view this in my LinkedIn page or in the ICCP pages. Before we conclude, if there is any time left for Q&A, let's move to that. Thank you very much, Jennifer, again.
Oh, thank you very much. Before we begin with the questions, we do have 8 questions and we have 2 people with their hands up. So why don't we take the questions from the Q&A box first? So that's fair warning for the people who have their hands up to prepare themselves to ask their questions. But first, several people have asked if we will be distributing copies of the Green Book. Unfortunately, no, that is not our proprietary work. The Green Book contract is distributed by FIDIC. So this is information for people to use the Green Book more effectively, but we do not have the right to give out copies of the Green Book. And also quite a few people have asked about the replay and the slides. Those will be posted on the website, both in the members area and in the public area. So if you go to the website, instituteccp.com, there is a resources tab and webinars are in the resources. So just scroll down until you find this one. Give me a day or 2 to get it edited and posted, but it will be up there. And if you requested more information about the ICCP, you will get that link with the more information. Okay, so I think we're ready. And we have 11 questions now, plus 2 people with their hands up, 12 questions now. Mansoor has very kindly allotted us 1 hour, but he has another appointment. So this may be all of the questions that we have time for. And we may run out of time. If so, I do apologize. But again, Mansoor is doing this in between his appointments. So let's get started. First question is about adjudication. Was 1999 open to be ad hoc or standing? And now in 2021, is it only standing?
Yeah, I think I covered this subject very well. I mean, in 1999, it was ad hoc. It was not stated that there should be a standing member, although in the notes of the guidance, there are more details covering this matter. Especially there's a special notes for covering that adjudication issues. But in 2021, from the general conditions of contract, there should be a standing adjudication. And although it's on an informal level, because of the smaller type of the contract, and what a serious claim come in, they will be on picture. But I think I covered this very well during my session, and you can always go back and see that. And that will answer your question, I believe.
Okay, next question. Moving right along, for force majeure, is any timeline mentioned for reporting a force majeure event?
I have to check that. I'm not very sure. I'm not very sure about the specific. I've been preparing this thing. Maybe I probably missed that part. I can just quickly see that in this thing on the force majeure. I think in 1999, certainly there may be not much mention about it, but for sure 2021, it must have been more clearly detailed. Yeah. So.
Yes, I think in 2021, they would have had some more urgent need to include that information.
Yeah, force majeure is part of that clause, so not much details are there for the force majeure, except that it is force majeure has to be informed. That's it. Yeah.
The next question: is there any limitation on the maximum contract amount?
Oh no, this is something which is. If you see the original intent of the 1999 Green Book used to be a $500,000 and a 6 months construction period. But that over the period of 21 years from 1999 book to the 2021 edition, FIDIC itself has recognized that due to the simplicity, when the client wants more repetitive job, And even World Bank had referred projects up to 10 million US dollar from the 500,000. But now I think there is no limit, and they are talking very clearly that this is positioned as a wonderful alternative to the FIDIC 2017 red and yellow book. They are not touching the gray book or silver book because that is more complex and that has a lot of liability on the contractor. So green book can no way be a substitute to a gray book, but for sure it's being intended to be an alternative to the FIDIC red book and FIDIC yellow book. So there is no limit, as such. I don't think, only on the original inception there was a limit, but now I don't think there is a limit set out. But in the forward, it is said that it is open for any big projects and positioned well for the 2017 red and yellow books.
Okay, thank you. The next question is there a formula for prolongation costs or a ballpark percentage of contract value given against employer delays?
There is a detailed prolongation cost calculation provided in the particular conditions of contract of the 2021 edition. And this is something which makes it stand alone in comparison to the earlier version, as well as something which is something good for both the parties. Here they give a formula, something like I think if you see the 1.1.36 particular conditions, the formula is detailed very well in the particular contract, and various different conditions are provided if it is within a certain limit or a limit beyond that. So prolongation costs shall be only compensation due from employer to the contractor for an extension of time resulting from a compensable delay. For the avoidance of doubt, this provision shall not affect contractor's compensation right for the other costs, such as disruption cost. So I think that clarifies the whole thing. But it is very important that I think you should buy the 2021 edition, because this clarification is more clearly detailed, because all this different categories are stated there.
Okay, thank you. All right, advance warning in 2021. There was also a similar provision in 1999, but named early warning 10.3. Is that correct?
No, 10.3 of 1999 is an early warning. Here it's an advance early warning. That early warning was connected with the claims. That it has to be connected with the claim in such a way that the employer gets the 28 days notice time. That was the warning period of the 1999. But in 2021, it's going a step ahead, and it talks about the early advance warning period, not the warning period here. And this advance warning period, where either party is even thinking that there could be something going wrong, they have to inform each other and the engineer to advise of any known probable event which may delay or disrupt the execution of the works or increase the contract price. So it's two different things actually. The warning provision of 10.3 in the Green Book 1999 is a little bit more advanced with advanced warning provision here in 2021 version.
To be fair, advance warning and early warning do sound like the same thing. So that is pretty tricky, I think.
Yeah, I think the details are different, because the earlier one was an early warning, but early warning saying that, yeah, it's almost like the same thing, but there is a time period also with a 28 days warning period. Here the warning period timing are a little bit long. I mean, you can say it much earlier and you can wait for it, and the employer is not relieving his responsibility from that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So hopefully that clears that up, but it may not make it easier to remember which is the advance warning and which is the early warning.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. The next question: which type of contracts is the Green Book more suitable? Lump sum, or measure and pay contracts? And can you highlight any examples of projects implemented using the Green Book?
way back in our projects, we have used a few green books, but that was local project. We wanted to avoid the complication of using a very lengthy document, which troubles the client as well as the contractor. And the bigger the book, the bigger the liability comes, the bigger the contract price comes out. Yes, sometimes it is too loose, but when you know that it's a simple, straightforward job, we have used Green Book 1999 in some smaller projects, in some residential apartments and all. But 2021 is still a very new one, so it's too early to start using it. And I think they just started selling it, so people are just trying to understand the benefits of it. Now, what was that first question, Jen? One more time on the same thing.
Is the Green Book more suitable toward a lump sum contract or measure and pay contract?
Like what I said in the 2021 book, for instance, it is open for all different type of them. It's open for different type. If you're talking about the lump sum, they have the provision for the lump sum. You're talking about a measured contract or a combination or a cost plus, that options are there. And in the valuation, there are so much detailed valuation procedure on how you would like to make that interim payments and the monthly payments done. So it's a choice, for country like Kuwait, for instance, when we work, we only go for a lump sum contract, and we put that much of responsibility to the contractor and ask him to take up due responsibility, due care, while he fills the tender to cover up all the responsibility and the risk. So that provision also is possible in this 2021 Green Book, because it covers most of the risk and the responsibilities for both the parties. So I wouldn't say that it is meant for a unit rate contract or a lump sum contract, because it depends on the client. If you are good enough that you have covered everything very clearly, then sometimes remeasured contract is always better. Maybe you might make some saving there. But if you are not very sure that some things you don't want to be very particular about, then the lump sum contract might be more helpful and move forward.
Okay, thank you. So we only have about 5 or 6 minutes left. So this question is, when considering repayment of advance payments, how is that administered?
Advance payment is not mentioned in the 1999. I think I touched base that point. But through the appendix, you can add up that section. But in general, the general conditions doesn't talk anything about the advance payment, because the contract values at that time was smaller there. In the 2021 book, advance payment are mentioned very clearly. And in the valuation procedure, I think it talks very clearly about how the advance payment deduction happens. It is like any other contracts. I don't see any complication in that. Can't recall at least, but if you see the payment procedure now, if you see the payment part, in the interim payment, while the engineer is certifying the rest of the payments, he is also doing the due deduction for the advance payments. So that's very well managed in 2021 books. Because in the statement, the estimated contract value of the work should be there. The percentage of deduction, retention until the amount retained, the percentage stated in the contract data, the other deductibles, including the advance payment, repayment of the advance payment. So in 8.3c, it talks very clearly about how the advance payment will be retained back.
Okay, thank you. The next question asks about 6.3 advanced warning. The consequences are not clear. Do you have any comment?
6.3 advance warning in 2021. Yeah, this is what I said. I said, it just talks about that whenever you feel like each party shall advise the other, and the engineer shall advise the party in advance of any known or possible future event or circumstances which may delay or disrupt the execution of the work or increase the contract price. Now, in 6.3, if going back to the particular conditions, you could put a time limit there. So the whole clause is covered in the general conditions, allowing you to do any alterations on the particular conditions of contract and cover as specific as what you would love to have it. I hope I answered.
Okay, thank you. moving right along, I think we'll just have time for one or two more questions. What is the rationale for maintaining the new Green Book if it's gravitating towards red and yellow 2017?
Well, I mean, talking about very complex jobs, very complex job where, you have a much bigger capital value of the project, where, there are things which liabilities are to be accounted much in a bigger fashion. Then, you talk about the red and the yellow book based on whether it is completely designed by the employer or partially designed by the contractor. Or, you go to the plant and equipment thing where you go to the yellow book now. But having said that, in a general book, in the forward of the 2021, it says very clearly that this is positioned for as an alternative to the red and yellow books in future. So, fairly like what we talked about, 10 million, $20 million US job and not too complex, simple buildings, straightforward activities. Surely, I think we should be moving into the Green 2021 books rather than going into so complicated, 2017 versions, which can just be, a nightmare sometimes. I mean, 2017 books are so much of a nightmare, but I don't want to say that to that extent. But it covers all the rights, all the responsibilities, yes. But at the end of the day, talking about 109 pages of document versus a 30-page document, and almost able to handle the same matters. Naturally, it's a call, of the employers. Really.
Okay. With that, we are out of time. We've actually already gone over by a minute or two.
All right. Thank you very much, and wonderful catching up, and nice to be around with such a big group. Thank you, and thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, we'll say goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Thank you.